Hello, I'm Patrick Lilly, a real estate broker and coach in New York City and the Hudson Valley. This is the first episode of a series, America's Top Realtors, where I interview the highest producing agents in the nation and what contributes to their success. I've been selling real estate in New York City for 41 years now, and I love this city. It seems appropriate to start our Top Agents series with Shaun Osher, my boss and friend. Shaun is the #1 agent in New York City in 2023 and #2 overall in the United States with just under $1 billion in sales. I hope you enjoy his expertise. I know I did. Shaun.
Patrick.
Thank you for doing this.
Anytime.
So we're going to get right into the meat of this. How did you get into real estate?
Got into real estate as a means to support my habit of being a jazz musician.
You came from South Africa to New York to be a jazz musician?
I did, to study jazz and immerse myself into the great American art form of jazz.
And how do you feel like your history in jazz has actually affected your ability to sell real estate?
Improvising. I think, great jazz artists have the ability to know the rules of engagement, but improvise within those boundaries. I think being a successful entrepreneur, business person, and specifically in real estate, you have to have those skill sets. Being able to adapt and adjust your daily kind of outcome as it presents itself.
Isn't it interesting how, I feel it's interesting that your path in life is never really set, but you'll take certain directions that help you to get to where you need to be. So example, your love of jazz brought you to New York, but jazz was not going to be your profession, it was going to be a passion. And that landed you here where you should be. How do you feel like your personality fits New York well? Because it's a good sync.
I think New York is is the toughest city in the world, I think, with respect to being successful and engaging in the business world. There are definitely tougher cities in the world to do other things, but to survive as an artist, first and foremost, it's one of the most difficult places. Just the cost of living here, surviving. So you have to have the mentality of waking up each day and getting ready to go into the ring.
And you like that?
Well, it's my personality type. I think there are definitely people who come to New York and they get eaten alive and spit out and, they go elsewhere.
Do you know any of your personality types that are tests like DISC or MBTI, what your personality type is through those?
I don't.
Okay,
No,
we might have you take one or two of them and then we can put that type in later on.
Sure, the more I can learn about myself, the better.
Okay, that sounds good. What drives you? What gets you going in the morning?
Well, I think throughout the phase of my life, different things have been different drivers and motivators. I will tell you a large part of the thing that drives me is maybe not that good, but it's fear. Fear is a very strong motivator and driver.
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of letting people down. I'm afraid of, I didn't realize this was going to be a shrink session. You're not going to make me cry, are you?
I hope so. That's like laughing and crying in the same interview's key.
Well, I'm afraid of, I think I've evolved and I've matured where it's not fear as much as it used to be. I used to be afraid of being homeless, not having. I kind of grew up without much and I was always hustling. I worked from the age of 6, really.
Really?
Yeah, I've always had a very strong work ethic. Out of necessity, I've had to work. So that was always ingrained in me. I've never known what it's been like to not work. So that's a part of my DNA, and a driving factor on the first part of my professional life was fear of not being able to pay the rent, not being able to provide. And I think that happens for a lot of people, and fear is a very strong motivator and driver.
Oh, I love it when people take what we would consider to be negative emotions and they use them to make their lives better. I think that's a brilliant thing, and everybody's going to have a different motivator. Some people fear is going to work great for, and some it's going to do the exact opposite for them.
I mean, I didn't choose it. Like, I wasn't like conscious
Of
about my
course.
decision of like, I wouldn't want to live my life in fear. But then, over the course of, the funny thing is I've never been afraid to take risk.
That was my next question.
And I've never really been afraid to fail in the way that like, oh, I tried something, it didn't work out. That was never a fear, because I've tried a lot of new things and I've always been adventurous.
Do you feel like you're as fearless in work as you are in, say, your personal life or your family life?
I'm becoming, the older I get, the more conservative I get with respect to my family life. I'm driven by wanting to be a great husband and father.
And you are.
Then, thank you. And, I think that's a strong motivating factor for me. And then also when it comes to my professional life, the two are very integrated. So, it's not like I suddenly turn one off and turn the other one on. They're all connected. And part of being an entrepreneur, a thought leader in the industry, and a CEO, an owner of a company, is making sure I stand up for the right thing, follow my set of values and ethics, and conduct myself in a certain way that I'm going to be proud of, and I can look myself in the mirror and hold myself accountable to those values.
Oh my God, so there's so many directions I can go from that last statement that I want to ask you about. So we're gonna hold on to that, and I'm gonna break that statement down to multiple points. Let's talk about your leadership style and what's important to you, because I've worked at several companies in New York in my 40 years in business. And when I was happiest at the firms that I was with was that the person at the top of the company had the same ethics and morals that I had, or at least similar, and that I could respect them on an integrity level. When I'm selling in New York City, I sell with Core Real Estate with Shaun, and in upstate I have my own company in Hudson Valley. But one of the reasons I've stayed here so long and continue to stay here is because of you, because I know that you're always going to do the right thing, and it spreads throughout the company. So talk to me about your leadership style.
I mean, I think as a leader, I don't really think of myself as a leader. I think of myself as a team member, and I have a certain role to fulfill. I'm really here to provide support and do the things that I'm good at to help other people.
So part of being a leader, Shaun, though, is showing direction for your company, for your team, for your organization, showing people how that you want them to be in the world with each other, with clients, and you definitively do that. So talk to me about your thoughts about a leader in that format.
Yeah, I mean, I think leaders, the best leaders lead by example, and they've been in the trenches, and they're very relatable. So when I started Core, I really imagined Core as an extension of my own personal business and the way I would conduct my own business. And I based and founded the company on those principles and that work conduct, to be honest, have integrity, never lie, do the right thing, not only because it's smart business, but it's because who I am as a person. And I think companies have personalities, and I think those personalities stem directly from their leadership.
Well, then we must be a really fun company. That would be coming from you for sure. All right. So the other part of the question that came out earlier was how you learned. You mentioned that you've made mistakes, and they have been some of your best learning tools. So how do you continue to learn as a very successful business person in your life today?
I mean, I think, not a day goes by where I don't learn something. And that to me is what's exciting about our industry. So I'm always immersing myself in meeting people, seeing new real estate, understanding what's going on in the market. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I speak to people when I see them. And I always try and be as mindful as possible to ask the right questions and listen more than I speak.
What podcasts do you listen to?
Wide array. Every day I listen to the Daily Brew, which is kind of a 28-minute daily news update of world events. I listen to Dr. Huberman. I listen to Dr. Mark Hyman. I've listened to Jay Shetty. I listen to there's a Better Sax podcast. There's music. Just a wide array of different.
And what
podcasts.
type of books do you read?
I love biographies. Really are my favorite genre because I think there's so much to learn from the way other people have lived their lives.
So what's one of your favorite biographies?
There's so many, but I would have to say Shoe Dog, which is the story of Phil Knight.
Oh, yes.
The creator of Nike.
I just saw the documentary on that.
Yeah,
it was good.
Incredible story.
So, what were some of the key moments in your business career, your real estate career, where you've seen dramatic growth?
Dramatic growth in my personal business?
Yes.
I mean, I think, that first big deal is always a kind of a milestone in someone's career.
What was your first big deal?
So my first year in sales, I hustled on the street. I managed to sell a group of buildings in Tribeca for $12.6 million.
And what year was that?
1998-ish, 1999, and I received...
That was a lot of money back then.
$240,000 commission is a lot of money today.
Yeah, that felt good.
And that was a life-changing kind of career deal.
While we're on that, what's your biggest deal you've ever done?
As a single transaction, or as like, because I'm selling
a single transaction.
$160 million.
And what was that?
That was a building I sold on Madison Avenue to Vornado.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a nice connection connecting to Vornado too.
Yeah.
And what in the last 5 years, what's the least expensive property you've sold?
I think I've sold a studio for $800,000.
Well, then I guess the studio I just sold for $500,000 beats yours.
That does. If you're playing golf, the low number wins.
That's good point. Good point. That was the first big career shift. Have there been other ones? I would think that one of them would have been getting into new development for you.
Oh yeah, I mean the first new development building I pitched and won, that was a huge game changer for me. I found an article which was written in the New York Post about a person who had just bought a gallery building in Soho, was going to convert it. I just came off winning the award for the #1 broker in the company and the #1 broker downtown, and I called the developer. I found his name and phone number in the phone book. That's when we were using phone books, and I told him that it would be a huge mistake if you didn't hire me to sell his building.
And you're very convincing. And which building was that?
And it would have been a mistake. 420 West Broadway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I've actually lived in one of the buildings for many years at 150 Nassau.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, love that building. What would it take for a new agent to get into new development?
Selling new development is a completely different skill set in a lot of regards than selling a resale. Because you're selling a multitude, many apartments in one building. So you really need to kind of every day bring that energy, excitement into that experience, and that can really wear on you. It's almost like doing a Broadway show, a run for 20 years. You've got to go on stage every day and act as if it's your first performance. So I think, be an expert. The fundamentals are the same. You've got to be knowledgeable. You have to be experienced. You have to be able to bring a certain level of expertise and professionalism. And, it's not for the faint of heart. It's really a tough business. It's not as...
How is it tough?
Well, you've got to make sure that you show up every day. You've got a lot more things to deal with, inventory. You've got a lot more things that you need to know about a building, the engineering, the structure, the developer, the architecture, the integrity of the building, the message of the building. When done right, it's a very highly skilled profession.
So to me, that's what you do exceptionally well, is the messaging or the story behind each new development. And when we were talking earlier today, you said that no two buildings are alike in new developments, that you don't do a cookie cutter plan like, say, maybe Toll Brothers does. you come down with a creative idea, message, story for each new development. Can you talk to me about that and what drives the story?
Well, what drives the story is understanding the market and who the buyer is. Every piece of information comes from that, right? Who is our audience? Who is ultimately going to be living in the home? I would say the one fundamental thing that's always driven the decisions that I've made has been the client. It's never been about me or the agent or the business. You know, we're in a service industry, so understanding what the client wants is the driving factor behind 99% of our decisions. And the same is true in a new development. If you understand who the buyer is going to be, you form your story, your marketing, your floor plans, your amenities, the entire messaging and the vision of the project meets the buyer's needs. If you do that successfully, your project will be successful.
But you also, Shaun, you create very different stories for each one of your buildings. Let's take Cortland. One reason, and Cortland's, what's the sales range? It's very expensive.
It's $1 billion sellout, and the units range from $4 million to nearly $100 million.
So it's cheap. The question is how did you change this? Did the story create how the apartments and amenities were set up, or were the amenities and apartments already there and then you created the story, or did the two work together?
Everything is symbiotic. So you first have to understand who the buyer is going to be, and then you have a vision to the product that the buyer would pay a premium for, right? That's the formula. So if you understand who the buyer is, you can create the story and the product that meets the buyer's needs. They'll pay a premium for it.
It's true. That's true. So when you told earlier, you said a great story about how you got your first new development project, which is like get on the phone, read the newspaper, make the phone calls.
Right.
How do you source new developments coming on? Now, obviously you have existing relationships with past developers, but how do you reach out to bring in new developers into your circle?
I read the newspaper, I get on the phone, and I make the call. I have cold call to this day. Now, it's less of a cold call now because
they know who you are.
They know who I am, so it's easier getting in the door. And I have a book of business and a lot of case studies to prove my point. But the intent and the spirit is the same.
So let's say you're a new agent, and tell me 3 things, whether it's for new development or just in general sales, what are 3 things you think that they should do to become successful in their first year in the business?
Don't lie or make things up that you don't know. You'll lose instant credibility. Work hard and immerse yourself in everything that life brings at you and presents, because there will be so much opportunity that will present itself to you if you go out and put yourself out there.
And I'm going to add a number 4 to that because I know you believe it. Pick up the phone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of immersing yourself.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, make sure people know you're there to work and provide a service to them at a greater level than anyone else will.
So what I've seen is a lot of agents have a real problem, a real fear of picking up the phone and calling somebody
Then
they
you will
don't
not
know.
be a successful real estate agent, period.
What do you think that they should say to themselves to get over that fear?
There was that Saturday Night Live skit, I'm good enough, and people like, that's like that self,
Buy a mirror and give yourself an effort. It actually is true.
I'm going to do a great show today, and I'm going to help people because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
You have to have confidence in your ability. Nobody knows everything, but the one thing you can bring to the table is your attitude, right? Have a positive attitude and your willingness to learn and go that step further for your client.
Shaun, I feel like you have a different marketing or selling proposition than most real estate companies do. And then in fact, you establish core on those bases. Do you want to share that with us?
I mean, I think almost in every profession, whether you are raising capital, a musician, an artist. Bono, I just read his biography, which is fascinating and I recommend. And I think in the first part of the first chapter, he calls himself a salesman. And I thought that was really interesting because everybody is selling something. You know, we just happen to sell real estate. So essentially, I think we're more of a marketing company, right? We're marketing and we're messaging and communicating. Yes, we need to be educated and know our product, and we're communicators and messengers of information, but we need to market. And Core was founded on the principle that first we're a marketing company, we happen to sell real estate.
And I feel like there's a big element there that if you look at your job as you're a consultant to your client, they can trust you a lot more because they don't feel like they're being sold, they feel like they're being consulted to.
Well, that's being honest.
Yes.
You know, like that's honesty. It's very simple. You know, and I say, and you've heard me say this many times, be the person your parents wanted you and told you to become. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, be punctual, dress for work. All of the basic fundamental principles that make a good person, those, if you do those, you're way ahead of the game.
Very true. Have you ever had a real estate coach?
No, I've not ever had a real estate coach.
Which is interesting because most top agents have, and I believe you're the exception. So I also think it's because you study so much and you read and you...
Yeah, I mean, it's not because it just never happened.
What activities do you do on a weekly basis that make you successful?
So many things. I work out every day, exercise, I meditate, I read, I still play music almost every day. I like to take time to educate myself about all things global, including real estate. I go out and I look at as much real estate as possible. One thing I never understood is, people who are trying to sell real estate and they don't go out and see real estate. So I immerse myself in knowing the market and continuing to learn more about the market every day.
We both believe that mistakes are some of your best life lessons. Give me a mistake or two that you've made that you've learned from.
There was a time when I was pressured by the industry to grow the company larger than it should have grown. And that was a strategic error on my part. And I learned a lot from that. Core by design is boutique because I have a certain level of standard and conduct that I expect, to be held accountable. To maintain a certain level of consistency is very difficult regardless of the industry or the company. So I grew the company to a point where the integrity of the company and the brand consistency was being watered down. And I pulled back from that and I adapted.
So it's fascinating because I see a couple of follow-ups from there. The first one is you're so much happier now that you're not trying to grow this into a bigger company.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things I've really noticed and appreciate.
Yeah.
The second thing is let's talk about profitability. I'm not going to go into your numbers, but I suspect your personal profitability is much, much higher now that you're clear about what you want to be doing. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
And on the subject of profitability, what are some things that agents need to be considering?
I mean, I think your personal savings plan, because being a real estate agent is one of the most difficult jobs mentally, right? Nothing is certain. You could have a year where you do 100 transactions, you could have a year where you do 0. And that's not a representation of you and your skill set, it's a representation of so many things that factor into our success, things that we have no control over.
I find that a lot of agents chase new business with a return that's very low in terms of profitability, whereas other means are much higher profitability. And what are some things that you think that they should look out for?
I mean, I think it's very important to save, to make sure that you're not stressed out, because your clients will sense energy from you. And if you're stressed and you're worried, and that's not a good feeling. No one wants to be dealing with that.
And they can read it. Like when you have enough money in the bank, that you're not going to worry if this deal goes through or not. You're going to come across as more of a consultant, and they're going to feel that.
Right, absolutely.
And if they feel like you're pushing because there's not enough money in the bank.
Yeah, you don't want to be like selling. You know, you want to be an advisor or a consultant.
Yeah, I've always, not always, but I've believed for many, many decades that the best selling strategy is a non-selling strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. We're more like just educating the consumer than trying to sell them something.
And I always like to tell them, like, you know, these are the great things about it and why you consider it. And there's a couple drawbacks here. Let's just talk about them. Mm-hmm. Probably the most important question I'm going to ask you for our real estate agents that are listening: how do you generate leads?
You plant seeds. Someone very early in my career said that to me, and it really resonated with me, and I've followed through on that. Sometimes you'll plant a seed and it'll germinate immediately. Other times you'll plant a seed and 5 years later your phone will ring and they'll say, hey, remember when I met you at the restaurant in Soho and you said you were a real estate agent? Well, now I'm looking, or now I have to sell. So it's continuing to be present, put yourself out there, let people know that you are, you know, professional, trustworthy, and reliable.
And then once you've planted the seed, which is key, how do you stay in touch with them?
You know, I think each person needs to create something that's authentic to their brand. I stay in touch with people. I write a newsletter every week that I've done for the last 3 years.
And if do you want to share people how they can get on the newsletter?
Sure, you can go to podcast, padkos.com. Podcastblog.com. If you Google it, it'll come up. Podcast is an Afrikaans word from South Africa, which means, you know, take something along, food for thought along the way. So these are like
I have wondered what that meant.
Yeah, so it's little nuggets, you know, for your week, just thought-provoking things. So that's resonated really well. It's gone a little viral. People seem to love it. I have a very small presence on social media. I do things there when I feel it's appropriate. And I like to pick up the phone and stay in touch with people one-on-one. And
I think that's what you do best.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do that. We're not going to be replaced by artificial intelligence yet. There are certain ways that will disrupt our industry, but at the end of the day, what we bring to the table is ourselves. And that's the most important thing to present to a client, whether they're an existing client or a prospect.
Our second episode will be with Paul Grover, who's the top broker on Cape Cod. And what's clear to me is that the reason he's so incredibly successful is the seeds he's still planting today, but been planting for decades, and that's why he's at the top of the game. And that's the one thing that you two definitively have in common, and that you both are not afraid to pick up the phone. What type of marketing works for you personally?
I think there are certain touch points and levels of hierarchy in marketing, and the number one thing is being front and center in front of a person physically. You know, because then you have the ability to sell yourself.
It makes sense.
Yeah, so when you meet someone, or if you have 5 minutes with someone, or if you're introduced to someone, that is your moment to shine.
They read your energy, they read your confidence, they read your knowledge base, they read if you're full of bull. I
mean, one of my favorite quotes that I bring up is, you know, people remember not the things you do, but the way you made them feel. And I think your best way to make someone feel something is to be in front of them and present yourself.
So I feel like I make really good videos, and the reason I do that, one of the reasons is I'm comfortable in front of the camera, but you taught me how to make a good luxury video. So what would our listeners like to hear?
I think a lot of people make the mistake of showing too much and trying to show everything. A marketing, whether it's a video, a photo, an ad, is really a call to action. What you want to do is you want to have just enough to tease someone to pick up the phone, get them motivated, to bring them in physically into a space.
And I can hear you saying in my head, Patrick, it's a tease, not a tour.
Absolutely. And it's a call to action. You want to make sure that they're interested enough to pick up the phone and then be there physically where you can actually do your job.
We talked earlier, you're not a big social media person. How, when you do use it, what are you looking to do and how are you effective with it?
Well, I think social media is an extension, another touch point of your brand. So it's just like a marketing letter, a newsletter, a podcast. It's a tool in your toolbox to use to promote what it is you want to say. So I'm very strategic about the things that I want to show, and you can go to @Shaun Osher on Instagram. Shameless plug.
No, you're here to do that. We want you to plug. How is selling luxury property different from selling typical property?
It's no different.
Good point.
Selling is selling. It's the same principles apply whether you're selling a used Toyota Corolla or a brand new Bugatti.
Oh, I like that. You have an excellent team around you where you can delegate what needs to be delegated. How do you go about creating your team? How do you hire them? How does the interview process work? And what are you looking for in a team member?
I'm really looking for someone in a team. When I hire a new team member, I'm looking for someone who's going to add to the equation. Right? Everybody brings their own certain skill set and expertise to the table. I want someone who does certain things better than I could ever do them. And I want to make sure that that's their sweet spot and comfort level of what they love to do and want to do. It's the things that wake them up in the morning that they want to come in for. And, you know, Core has been a company where we've never pigeonholed people. We've never said, okay, we have this position, you have to do X, Y, and Z. The first question I ask someone when they want to join either the company or my team is, what do you love to do, and how can you bring that here, and how can I make you more successful at doing that?
Ooh, that's a great question. Really good. I like that. And out of curiosity, do you always marry your COO?
Just once.
His wife is Britley, and she's fabulous.
She is.
We love Britley.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the pros and cons of owning a company versus running a team. So you're doing both. You both have a team at Core that you run, and then you own the company Core. Mm-hmm. And there's pros and cons to both of that. Anything you'd like to share?
I think the concept is the same. The pro and con of owning a company is the risk involved in the overhead.
And they're not as profitable as they used to be 20 years ago.
The real estate business is a very difficult business. The real estate brokerage business is a very difficult business to make money from. Very difficult as an owner.
It's really in the team, running the team is where I would think you make the majority of your money.
Well, I'm not going to talk about which buckets come from where, but I will say that I don't know of many better sweetheart deals in any industry that exist that are better than being an independent contractor at a real estate firm.
I agree.
You're taking no risk. You're getting a lion's share of the income.
Right.
And you have no exposure.
Exactly. Or very minimal.
Minimal, I mean, your exposure is your time, right? Which is valuable. It's your most valuable asset. But from a financial standpoint, you're not paying for your overhead. You're hopefully reinvesting in your business, and spending some money on growing your business. But beyond that, there's no risk from a financial
and there's so much more money to be made on a well-run team than there can be on a well-run real estate agency in the more recent future than, say, 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
You're an agent. What are some good places to spend your money on to grow your business or to invest in yourself?
I think yourself. I think the best place to invest in your business when your business is yourself. And I don't mean that facetiously. I mean the way you look, your appearance, your education, the way you communicate, anything that can improve you as an educator and as a salesperson and a marketer, you should spend money on.
Yeah, and I would also say there are some lead sources worth investing in, and there's others that not. But don't go ahead and spend money until it can be proven that other people have made money from that same investment.
Yeah, I think that's a really good rule of thumb. Don't try and reinvent the wheel or create a new wheel. Follow what's working and double down on that.
And just because a great new idea comes along, maybe not be the first adapter. Maybe wait till some other people have done it successfully and then adapt and spend the money.
Yeah.
I've learned that lesson the hard way. So I'm curious, what does a typical day look for you? Like, I know your schedule today was multiple Zoom calls. There's like one after another. What does a typical day look like?
The thing that's kept me sane in this business is that there is no typical day. Every day brings a new adventure and its own itinerary. It could be 20 meetings back to back. It could be no showings, no meetings, just a day in the office. And that's the adventure.
And, you know, this job would be really boring if we weren't able to do that.
Oh, it's what gets me up in the morning, knowing that every day, and honestly, this may sound cheesy, but every day brings a new opportunity. You never know by the end of the day what you've created and what new opportunities are going to exist.
It does sound cheesy, and I like it. Do you have a morning ritual?
I do.
Which is?
Wake up, that's important.
All right, now you're being a smartass.
No, actually, all jokes aside, waking up, I try and keep my sleep schedule the same. Sleep is very important. I try and get 8 hours sleep a night. I often fail at that, but I try and get up at the same time. I get any kids that are going to school. I don't get on my phone. I don't look at email. I don't look at social media. I don't touch the phone. I take all thought process out of my morning. I get up, I have water, then I have a cup of coffee, I get the kids to school, I go to the gym, I come back, I'll usually meditate, look at some music, sit down then at that point and look at my phone and deal with emails or texts that have come in.
So what's the time span on when you got up to when you actually start looking at your phone?
I'll get up at 6:45 and the first time I'll look at my phone is 9 a.m.
That's awesome. You know, I know a lot of successful real estate agents. Some of them are a little too anxious, in my opinion, and that's not the case with you. And I think it's because of your morning ritual.
You have to. I think big part of being a successful human with so much distraction in the world and so much to like pull our attention elsewhere is having a routine and a ritual which does not involve social media and things that will draw our attention away from the things that are most valuable to us.
Let's say you were starting in a new market. You were moving from New York to Des Moines, Iowa.
Sounds awesome.
It sounds, you'd be really rich there. What would 3 things that you would do to start your business in Des Moines?
As an independent contractor, as
Yes.
an agent, I would go every day and I'd look at as many homes as possible. I would educate myself on the market. I would, 2, meet people, as many people as possible in the industry and outside of the industry. And then 3, I would make it known to whoever I can make it known to that I'm now an agent and will work harder, more diligently and professionally to either represent you buying a home or sell your home for you.
And I'm going to add number 4 to that. I'd hire an assistant right away to do the stuff that's not dollar productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What factors outside of your business life affect your business career or business profitability either positively or negatively?
Well, how much you spend affects your business, right? Everything is interconnected. And being a real estate agent is your life. I mean, it is, you have to set up boundaries to be successful, but it is a 24/7 business, right? If you're
Give an example of a boundary that you set up.
Well, so if someone texts me at midnight, I'm not going to respond.
Amen.
So, you know, we're not saving lives, we're selling homes and representing people. And, you know, there's no reason why someone should expect a return text at midnight. So that's a boundary.
It's a great boundary. What brings you joy, Shaun?
Seeing my family happy, like that's the number one thing. And then learning brings me a lot of joy. Whenever I learn something new, whether it's through playing music or reading a book or walking on the street and seeing something or asking someone a question or being asked a question is usually where I'll learn a lot of things. That brings me a lot of joy. That makes me feel alive. The things that make me feel most alive are the things that bring me the most joy.
I also think one of the things that brings you joy is landing a big, new, huge development.
That is always great. But you know, there's a certain anticlimactic thing with selling real estate, right?
Yeah.
You work so hard and you do all of these things and you get close to a client and do the deal, and then there's the closing, and then it's like you get the check, and then it's nothing.
Yeah.
You know, so there is that kind of.
So what's next?
So what's next? And then the stress comes in, or the fear, or the hustle, or, you know.
Yeah. What trends do you see coming up in the industry?
I think the biggest trend is going to be how AI will disrupt our business for the good and for the bad. I think we're going to see a knee-jerk reaction back to the way things were. Maybe not knee-jerk, but actually a natural pendulum swing where so much of what we do is personal and personable actions, you know, speaking to people, meeting with them. You know, we're in people's homes. I don't know how you replace that, you know, so the basic fundamentals of the business stay intact. You know, as a client, you're asking someone to take the keys to your home and you're letting them in the front door. That person needs to be trustworthy, reliable, educated, honest, make you feel good about, you know, giving them that front door key to, you know, come into your life, essentially, into your most personal place. So there's been a lot of talk in the last decade about technology and industry, and you know, I think a lot of it was smoke and mirrors and shiny new penny, and you know, so I think going back to the traditional fundamental way business should be conducted and will be conducted, and those people will be successful.
Shaun, you have a great blog.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell the crowd about it?
So if you go to podcast, PADKOS blog.com and subscribe, it's a weekly newsletter. It's just food for thought along the way on my travels as a real estate agent, father, husband, musician, New Yorker, person on the planet.
We'll be holding a Q&A with Shaun shortly. So if you'd like to join us, click on the information below in the description. We're trying to create a community for real estate agents where they can learn and grow from the best in the business, so I hope you'll join us. And if you like this content, you know what to do. Subscribe and like, please. And next month, we'll be interviewing Paul Grover, the #1 broker on Cape Cod. See you then.